Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks for those who are attending. We're excited to share a bit about the project, share our progress, share what we're doing, why we're doing, but then really just have a conversation with everybody. Hopefully, those who are attending can engage and share and give us some good information. You know, we're here to listen, but we're also here to answer any questions and just be open and involve the community. So maybe with that, we can go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, that's a great start.
Would you like to introduce your team?
Yeah, let's do that. Ryan, you want to get it started?
Yeah, so Catch Creative, we're a small agency up in Healdsburg, and we'll dive into that a little bit in this deck, but just for the sake of introducing ourselves personally, Brant and I are partners. Sully, our designer's also on as well to join us. And we've been working together for over 10 years. I grew up in this area. Brant transplanted to this area. I've lived in other places and I've come back home. I've lived in multiple places along the river. I feel like I know it well. I love it, but the more work I do in this sort of discovery process, which we'll share, I realize how much more there is to learn. I mean, there's a lot going on here. It's complex, it's evolving, and everybody kind of has feelings about it that are unique and special and important. And it's been a real pleasure to be able to work in my backyard on something that I care about as well.
Yeah, my name is Brant. I'm the creative director here, Ryan's business partner, as he mentioned, and just super happy to be working with such a talented group and just on such a great project. It's super exciting. You know, I am a transplant, but let's just say I've fallen in love with Sonoma County, and it's not by mistake that our office is directly across from the river, and is just something that I continue to learn more, and through this project, I've gotten to meet a lot of individuals, stakeholders and business leaders and locals, and just so many individuals. So just happy to be here and looking forward to a great discussion today. And so with that said, we're going to jump into today's agenda. So for today's agenda, you know, what we plan to do is go through, you know, the project as an overview, kind of the current status of where we're at. We're going to walk through a little bit about Catch's process through the project, review some of the outreach that we've engaged with thus far. You know, we can share a little bit about some of the discoveries that we had, but I think really ultimately, as Ryan said, today's purpose really is for us to engage with you and hear from you all. It's about you today. We want to just, you know, kind of get some good raw responses to some questions we've developed, and field whatever questions you guys may have. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a good, rich a meeting. And so this is a slide here for the Confluence and its mission and vision. And so perhaps, Elise, do you want to take over from here?
Thank you. I'm going to just give a quick overview. Looking at the audience, most of you have heard this, so I'll be quick. But the Russian River Confluence was started in 2017 and rebooted as part of this project. It was lying sort of fallow for a while, and now is ramping back up again. The goal is to protect the health of the river and the communities that rely on the river. We have a lot of participating organizations, from Mendocino all the way to the Lower Russian, all the way to Jenner. So other efforts have on the river look at small parts of the river, and one of the important pieces about the Confluence is that we work to bring together all of the organizations that and people that rely on the river in order to make it healthy. Because what can happen is we'll have a project happen in one place that will affect another, and at the moment there is no mechanism for that communication to happen. So looking at the watershed as a whole is going to help us do a better job keeping the river healthy. Our strategic priorities, the Russian River Revitalization Project is the tip of an iceberg in terms of the Confluence strategic priorities. Number one is watershed protection and restoration, quality and quantity of water supply, the tie between healthy watershed functions and the economic and cultural health of the communities, which is related to this, and metrics to measure crisis area and progress. We want to be able to triage the greatest damage first. And we also want to create some infrastructure that will help support projects to keep the river healthy. Obviously, a really important part of this is to have a good communications toolbox so that we engage stakeholders, whether they're residents or visitors or businesses or environmental organizations, all to work together towards the priorities of a healthy river and its beneficial uses including residential enjoyment, visitor uses, all those different things. So within the communication strategic priority, we're working on establishing effective communications across the watershed so that first, all the organizations working on the watershed and caring about the health of the river are engaged and working together, giving an online and personal tools so that we can gather and identify key priorities and all row in the same direction. We want to provide pathways to beneficial participation. Already, since we've started this, we've gotten FEMA reaching out to us and saying, will you participate in our high water mark? We've gotten businesses from other areas saying, can we sponsor, can we help fund projects that will help the river? So by having a location, a Keep Tahoe Blue type project, but a Keep Russian River Healthy project, and having an identity of pride and a place where people can go, this is going to help us move the watershed forward. So this project itself, the Russian River Revitalization Project, is the start of that, is the start of creating a place and an image and messaging that can help bring people together in order to work together as a whole. We have a great marketing committee that comes from tourism, from economic development, from the water agency, from transportation and public works, representing constituents of our district. So we have, we're working to engage stakeholders across the everything.
Yeah, thanks for that, Elise. Yeah, it's just a great team, as I mentioned, just a talented group. You know, perhaps across the whole kind of spectrum of the community in both the 4th and 5th district. So just a tad about Catch Creative, just so everybody is aware. Again, this is not about us today, so you know, I think it's probably worth us just kind of just getting through this, but just so you know who you're talking with. So, you know, Catch Creative, we've been around for, as Ryan mentioned, about a decade, and we've had the opportunity to work with tons of different organizations, big and small, some, you know, local and some national. But I think for the purposes of today, and I think really as a business owner, myself and you know, and being partners with Ryan, I think the thing that we truly love is when we get to kind of make serious impact in our backyard. And there is no shortage of love for the river in our studio. And so, you know, it really, though, does begin in our backyard. And many of the organizations we've been able to work with, everybody from Sonoma Land Trust to Becoming Independent to, you know, clearly a huge, you know, company here in Sonoma County and Fetzer, and you name it, we really kind of have touched a variety of different categories, if you will. So, you know, it's really tough to say exactly what Catch does, other than the fact that we're a creative group and we love to work with you know, mission-minded kind of organizations that seek to really, you know, have an impact on a community and do so in a sustainable manner. And so, just, you know, we're honored to get to work with the clients that we have, and super excited to be able to work on this project. With this project, it's you know, it's quite similar to many of the projects that we have, and that, we have a pretty strong process. And as you'd imagine, over a decade of doing it, we've become pretty experienced in how we kind of work our way through a creative project. As creative individuals, I'd love to tell you that, we just sit here in the studio and wait for lightning to strike and inspiration happens and boom, out comes creative things. That's not how it goes. That. And it takes a lot of work, right? And so to do that and to make something effective in a creative manner, there's a lot of things that take place behind the scenes. And so what we've developed a phased process for this project. If you notice down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see kind of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And those phases, each course, have a different group of activities to move the project forward, ultimately all culminating in what the objective of the project is. And so to share with you a bit about the current status of what we've been up to, we're in phase 1, and with that we've conducted stakeholder interviews. So we've reached out to over 90 individuals that are key stakeholders, business owners, residents, and community leaders, of various stripes. We've conducted over 35 long format interviews, which range anywhere from like 20 to 40 to 60 minutes, where we're really kind of getting in deep, really trying to, have deep conversations to understand, the complexities of the project and the river and what have you. Additionally, we have worked with some outreach teams, what we're calling kind of river teams, but traditionally marketing, these would just be street teams, right? But these are individuals that are going out and basically up and down the river in both the 4th and 5th district at a variety of, key touch points, and conducting interviews with over 125 individuals that are on the river. And so that's taken place on weekdays, on weekends, and as I mentioned, in a variety of different places. And so we've gotten a really wide swath of individuals, and it's really kind of helping us from a data perspective start to kind of glean some, maybe perhaps some overlapping types of information that can help us start to make some decisions. But ultimately, there's a lot of work to be done. We've done some exploration that's kind of outside of what we would consider kind of our traditional buckets here. We're just calling it additional exploration for now. But that really is us, studying up on, just all things Russian River. That's looking at campaigns that have taken place, throughout the past, say 2 decades. That's taking a look at, the wonderful Russian River book that's in, all the copper fields, that kind of lays out the wonderful history of the river. There's a documentary we've watched that is fantastic. And then just really kind of the historical piece of it. And just trying to understand, from an objective manner, like, what is the river to people? What is this wonderful natural resource that we have, and how can we honor that? One of the best conversations that I feel like we've had, and there's been many, but a gentleman from the Keep Tahoe Blue campaign, which was super informative and, really kind of a kind of an inspirational meeting, one that I think we took quite a bit from, just in terms of information. And then, as you're all aware, we developed a fully functioning bilingual website that works on all platforms. And that website hosts an online survey. And that survey, we're happy to announce we've gotten over 600 responses on that survey. And so, you start to total those numbers up. You got 90 stakeholder interviewees that we've reached out to, 125 individuals that have conducted these interviews on the river, plus 600 survey responses. As you can see, we start to actually get some real raw data, as I mentioned, to start to, be able to start to make some decisions. But ultimately, before decisions are made, I think the pivotal piece is that we talk and continue to talk with individuals such as yourself. So I think what we're happy to do is share a bit about what we've seen thus far, and kind of play it back to you, and get some input. really you see what you see and engage in that. And I think, the latter part of the meeting, which is what we're going to do. But here are some online survey results. And Ryan, I don't know, do you want to take a crack at sharing a little bit of these?
Yeah, so I think to backtrack a little bit, we've had a lot of conversations with people. We've engaged people in a variety of ways just to ensure we're making our best effort to be inclusive. We have a ton of information from all that, but I thought for this meeting, it would be good to share a specific type of information. And that would be the online surveys. We did a Facebook campaign to get a lot of visitors to that, which we got many, and then we got 600 plus responses, and they're still coming in. A lot of people think that the survey is focused on tourism and visitors, and yes, that information is valuable to us, but that's not the primary purpose. The reason why we get into that and asking the question is so we can know who the responses are coming from. Are they coming from locals? Are they coming from visitors? And then we can kind of hone in on the respondents and figure out what the trends are and similarities in their answers. So right off the bat, you can see in the left item, how close do you live to the river? This is the best way for us to determine, who's responding to the survey? Are they locals or are they visitors? And then from there, we can dial in and kind of filter out the responses so we know what the differences are and what people are saying and how they're feeling or the similarities. And that's really the value of sort of keeping it broad and having people responding from all different areas. But also we targeted the ad location. So the location was generally focused on the North Bay. We wanted perspectives that were local and all the way down to San Francisco and beyond. One thing to say is when we did kind of the street teams, which you talked about, public beaches, almost 80% plus of those people were from out of town. You go to other beaches that aren't necessarily public or obviously available or a regional park, and you're going to find more locals. The numbers there are harder to get in the conversations. We could have a street team out all day and you talk to a couple dozen people, whereas if you go to a public beach, you're going to talk to dozens and dozens of people. So here we have sort of surface level information that tells us who we're talking to online. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see, word clouds are a great tool to kind of just break down and simplify and sort of bring to the surface trends that we're seeing in prominence. It just looks like a bunch of words out there, but the scale and color of them do reference sort of volume of the answer. So right off the bat, we get to see here what words come to mind for locals and what words come to mind for visitors. And you can see that locals are obviously more issue-driven responses, and visitors are more about recreation and not really thinking beyond the surface of the river. Of course, I think there's a shared sort of appreciation and fondness for the river, but the concern and the respect and all of those items that actually create a healthy river are probably much more prominent amongst locals. This is pretty surface level. There is more, the survey is long, but we just pulled out a couple of basic observations, high level, that we thought were kind of interesting. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, so again, what would you most like to improve? I think people have a pretty shared hope for the quality of the river. Everybody wants and it can agree that a healthy river is important. People respect it, they appreciate it, they want to visit it for years to come. So that's what we have here.
And then here is, throughout the process, we've engaged with, many individuals again, and we've heard a lot of, suggested project outcomes, and thought it was valuable just to kind of, the old kind of quadrant SWOT analysis kind of, marketing, speak, but really it's basically just a way for us, a spectrum, to kind of share with you at a glance, 30,000 foot view. What are people saying? And, for the most part, there's some good consensus on some things that are more in kind of the immediate, area. But really, it's worth pointing out that litter mitigation signage, reusable merch, unifying brand identity. Those are great things. Those are things that I think there is a real great opportunity that's within the objective of this project. But when you're talking with individuals, we're trying to orient everyone that we talk with to inform them on what the project is and what the outcomes are potentially going to be. But we've got everything in here from, folks looking for river access to them saying, hey, I don't actually have an opinion, or things to all the way to like a river walk. So, there's a lot of different, I think, suggested project outcomes. But, I think, Catch, what we're trying to do is be good stewards of this project and ultimately kind of stay in our lane, if you will, to really to get to what Elise was saying. This is the tip of the iceberg. And so we've got to develop what that tip is first before more can be done. And so I think we're super excited to dig in there and get creative and move into the next phase of the project.
And I just want to make it super clear that these suggested outcomes are from the public. These are from conversations we've had. These are not from the sort of general proposal of the project. These are things that we heard when we kind of have an open conversation. What's missing, what's lacking, what are the areas of need? I mean, we've heard things from the drought to fire, right, to a river walk. Clearly, that's not going to happen as a result of this campaign immediately. We would love to change that kind of stuff, but we also need to be realistic on what's achievable. And, I think the expectations from what we've just in our experience so far talking to people, they're all over the place. And I think this is a great group to kind of talk about that further, because you folks are cornerstones of the community, your businesses, you're going to benefit from it. Hopefully you're going to perpetuate what's happening here. And so we just kind of wanted to share with you the things that we've heard.
Yeah. No, it's well said. And there's definitely, what we're kind of seeing is potentially some significant linkage, of course, between a healthy river and healthy businesses. And so I think that's a kind of a good summary, right, to perhaps jump into the discussion, because again, we're about 20 minutes in, 25 minutes in, so want to make sure that we allot enough time to engage in this this great discussion. So with that said, we've got some questions to go through. I think what we're going to try to do is, so Elise is going to help us do some of the moderating of the chat window and Q&A. So I think we're going to do our best to get to everybody. And so just, if you've got a question, you want to chime in, raise your hand. I think we'll get to you and we'll ensure that we get you an answer, whether it's today or thereafter.
Or a wild statement. We don't just need questions here. We just want you guys to share your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And it's best if you can either raise your hand or put your question in the Q&A, because that way everybody hears and sees the same questions, whereas the chat it doesn't always go to everyone. The first question is, what is the budget for this? So there's a three-part answer to that. The first thing is that we were allocated $160,000 from the state fund for climate resilience after the flood, and so $160,000 has been allocated to this, and a significant portion of that budget is in terms of producing signage, press release, all those different pieces. So it's not simply budget for these guys to do creative, which is awesome, but it's also to deliver deliverables, some concrete things as well. Michael Thompson has asked, could you please describe how the linkage between the river health and business was observed in your survey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think stakeholders who are very involved professionally, with the county and businesses and the health of our local businesses are pretty aware of a healthy river leads to a healthy business and vice versa, that they're directly linked. I would say the general public doesn't really think that way from our observations. They're not really aware of their behavior, I think, in a lot of ways, but I don't think they're thinking like, oh yeah, the river's great this year, I'm gonna go support businesses along the river. I think that's just behavioral type stuff. And as far as the local businesses perspective, this is why we're having this meeting. I'd love to hear from you, because we did reach out to a lot of businesses. I mean, we sent out mass emails. We try to be inclusive there, but I would say that that's probably a less sort of voluminous part of our research. Like, what is the perspective from behind the counter of a shop? Like, what do you see? And do you hear a murmur? Oh, the river's low, so nobody's here. I mean, we have heard that's directly linked to the flow. A lot of people have issues with algae is another one that's come up, but we would really like some more information on that. How directly related is it?
Yeah, and maybe just to say one other thing on that, Mike, it's a great question, and just to mention, the Keep Tahoe Blue gentleman that we spoke with. I mean, he was just a really good kind of reminder of, look, the river is a natural resource. It's a wonderful resource for the community at large, and there's a lot of different kind of masters to serve, if you will. But ultimately, one of the things that he had mentioned that has made Keep Tahoe Blue successful for the 65 plus years that it's been going on is that it really just does focus on the health of Lake Tahoe. And it was a good reminder, I think, for us creatively, as we talked to so many different folks, for this project, that really it's about keeping the river healthy. And ultimately, we believe that there is a linkage between the healthy community and healthy businesses as well. So I hope that answers your question.
The next question is, given that this is a flood-related project, what are the metrics with regard to flood prevention? Again, this is a multi-part answer. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, this is an information and communications toolkit, which will be used to help the health of the river. Out of that, there will be projects that will specifically address the metrics of climate resilience and flood prevention. And so some examples of this is, you may have noticed in the initial goals of the project, one of the strategic priorities is setting up metrics up and down the river to be able to measure the current health of the river and what we can be doing for flood prevention and climate resilience. So we're going to be setting up those metrics, and that's part of the Russian River Confluence project. The second piece of it is that this is, again, the communication and education piece. So what is happening throughout this process is we are developing pieces that relate to flood prevention and resilience. So FEMA, we're right now working with FEMA on something called the High Water Mark project. They reached out to us once they heard of this project and said, we'd like you to participate in the High Water Mark project. And the High Water Mark project is a FEMA project where I believe Sevastopol's working on it now, but also we have participants throughout the country where we put out signage saying, here's the high water mark. So it's kind of a fun and interesting signage, but also it's an opportunity to engage people in knowing about and reminding people awareness about the flood. So it'll have a QR code on it, which will take people to our online resources. And it will also have the image that's being created out of this project. So we'll encourage people to engage on things like, we'll inform people about bioswale projects and about some of the First Nation participants in our group just did an algae removal project that when they took this invasive weed out, they returned, Mike Thompson, can you remind me, was it something like 60 million gallons of water back to it was in the millions of gallons of water back into the river because of that project. So we are going to be working to communicate with people and educate people about drought, about climate resilience, about flood prevention, and about recovery from those things.
Okay, is there any other questions that anyone has at this moment? Because we do have some prepared questions to kind of help guide the conversation, but if anybody has any other.
What donor vetting is being done to prevent agribusiness from using this project for greenwashing? This project is not involving agribusiness and greenwashing. So that may be a project for the Confluence as a whole. But it really isn't about, I understand that you're talking about wineries, Nick, but we try not to have meetings be one person asking question after question. Let's go to the discussion now.
Yep,
and
sure.
then and give voice to some of the other participants as well.
So the first question we have here is, what have you found to be your most effective marketing platform and or strategy? And of course, we're trying to look at this through a business owner's lens.
Looking to see if anybody is raising their hands to give us input. Michelle, you would probably have some great insight on this question in terms of not to put you on the spot, but in terms of how you reach out to people. Mags, you might also be. Many of you should have some good input in this in terms of what.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add some depth to it, every project, every campaign, every marketing effort has a strategic direction in how you're rolling it out, how you're communicating. You folks clearly know your area, your customer better than anybody else. We couldn't presume to know the people who you engage with better than you do. So, I mean, we want to know. The answers could be simple. It's word of mouth. It's sandwich signs on the sidewalk. It's
brochure
advertising with SMI. It's online advertising. It's social media. I mean, we really want to know what's effective and what's failed. Maybe, somebody has an example of, I dumped all this money into this thing and it went nowhere and I'll never do it again. I mean, this is your time to help sort of guide the success of this potential project.
We've got some input here on the chat. Michelle Luna, who has been the executive director, Shining Light at Armstrong Redwoods, the stewards of the coast and redwoods, says that social media is the most effective for us, as well as our weekly newsletter. Christine Palmer also put a link as an example of the high watermark initiative in San Anselmo and Marin County, so people can take a look at that. Mike Thompson of the Water Agency has asked, did you find in your research a particular audience that we should aim the message at, since we're all discussing the message at this point? What did you find, Ryan and Brant, in terms of the particular audience?
Yeah, I think it's a good and terrible answer, but everybody, I really do think that there's a behavioral challenge from everywhere, from visitors who don't respect and cherish it the way that it should be for it to be healthy and sustainable into the future. And then with locals, I think there's not the amount of pride that the opportunity provides. I think there's a lot of people who just have a sort of chip on their shoulder about things. I think there's a lack of optimism in the region for the river, and everybody loves and cherishes it and knows the value of it, but how is it expressed? And then we have to kind of lead by example in a way as locals, for those who are visiting. So I think across the board, we're looking at all different people. How we talk to them would potentially be different. And, Michael, we brought up education as a great opportunity. I mean, there's a continuous new generation coming who has the opportunity to sort of be a shift and then lead, by example. I think a good example of that, and we talked about that, just water conservation, how that's improving because people have been educated at a young age, they're getting better about it. And although it's a constant challenge, we have improved in that area. But also like recycling. I think recycling was once, not on the forefront of, our thought, and now it's something that we just do as a habit. So
yeah,
there's a wide range.
And maybe just to lay a couple of pieces of specificity from some of the research, looking at with the river street teams, it was kind of fascinating, Mike, where, or Michael, sorry, there was, about 75 to 80% of the individuals that were engaged with were Hispanic. And so that was really fascinating. And we actually heard a lot of, desire for the communications to be bilingual. And so, we were finding, folks coming from Contra Costa County, all, on Saturdays and Sundays, and coming a great distance to come to, enjoy this beautiful natural resource. I think it was great for us to hear that. I think we suspected as much, but I think, it's one of the, it's a critical point. It's just inexcusable these days for things to not be bilingual, especially in this community. And so I think that was a really great takeaway. And then, I think what we were really observed is this kind of, visitors and locals. And I think it's a really quick way of saying that the output of this project really needs to speak to both visitors and locals, and do so in a way that helps kind of join things and has a unification where people can rally around an identity of something, so they can really show the great pride that they have and use that as an opportunity to educate individuals. Because, we observed many individuals that know quite a bit about the river, but then on the flip side of that, some folks that they just don't, they know it's beautiful, they love the serenity of it, but they don't really get how truly integrated the river is as a resource for this community, more so than just something to recreate on. So hopefully that addresses it.
We've got a question from Larry that I think is for me. What is the plan to mitigate the homeless camps and garbage that affect the watershed and water quality? That is a multifaceted answer, so I'll try to keep it succinct and still full, because it's coming not only out of this program, but others. We have a wide-reaching educational programs for visitors, residents, homeless, about leave no trace, don't trash the river. So we've got an educational component. Second piece is we've been working at funding this. As a matter of fact, we just approved a grant to Russian Riverkeeper for clearing up that trash, and also another one to Curie and Sally to clean up that trash. So we have greater pickup happening. 3, we're doing a grant request, and this is the kind of thing that the Confluence is going to be doing and using our branding to do as well. With the Caltrans has a grant outstanding now that is a placemaking grant, which is specifically how can we improve public spaces by picking up trash. So we're talking with Creative Sonoma and Zero Waste Sonoma and Caltrans about a project which will be branded with this identity of putting a greater number of trash cans out that will have compost, recycling, and trash, but also it will be an art project. So we're working with the new River Arts Media and Creative Sonoma to have local artists painting and making a great public art project about picking up litter as well. And we also have so many projects right now through Project Home Key to house and take care of the homeless better than we have, and Project O to solve the mental health. So we have this really big network of projects on that particular question, Larry. Oh, and one of the most exciting things is happening next week. I'm going to a meeting, Sonoma, excuse me, Sonoma State University has been doing a study measuring the impact, the numbers of the homeless camps and garbage on the river quality. And that's really quite important. And Michael Thompson might be able to comment to this at Sonoma County Water, because when we go for state grants, water grants, any of those things, we have to be able to make that connection in order to get grant funds. So that project has been going on for the last year, and we've been waiting breathlessly for the results, because now we can take that information that we anecdotally know it to be true, but we'll have scientific research data that we can now put in grant requests and say, please fund porta potties, trash pickup, and homeless projects, because we now have the data showing the impact on the river. So lots of answers to that particular question, Larry, and we're working on it. You just added something here about more public sanitation facts, and I think I just answered that, Larry. Let's see, what else have we got out there? I'm going to look at the attendees, the hands. There's a hand up here. Nick, what would you like to ask? I'm going to, can you guys approve Nick from the attendees to speak?
Yeah.
There we go. So I understand that this was meant to include both tourists and residents. How are you able to break down your responses between the two groups?
Yeah, so for the digital is what I assume you're talking about. For the in-person, I mean, we just ask them where you're from, and then we know, you know, is this a visitor or local? We can kind of separate out those two groups. Digitally, we ask them how far they live from the river. So if they live 5 miles from the river, they're local. If they live more than 25 miles, they're local. And within that, we can essentially only look at responses from people who live within 5 miles. So we can just filter out the locals, and then we could also filter out just to look at visitors, people who live far away. We could do the same by how often do you visit the river? Visitors visit the river a few times a year, or locals visit it, you know, many times a week. So that's another filter we have to only look at the following responses from based on how they answer the initial questions.
I can send you the, I don't know when you joined, Nick, but early on in the presentation, Ryan showed the way that they were filtering out that information in a slide. So I'll send that slide over to you.
I actually was here. I did see that. My concern is just when I've heard from several residents that it's just when they sign on, they don't see a space for them. They don't see resident. They say how far away, which they assume is tourists. And I think you're missing a demographic that don't think that this survey is for them. And that has me concerned.
Yeah, well, half of the people who responded were locals. I mean, we have the information. So half of the people said that they live within, 10 miles from the river.
So Larry from SOAR has asked a question that I'm not quite certain how to answer, but what about overlove of the river by non-county residents during summer months? By providing more access, you are inviting more overlove. Larry, this is a really complex question that this project is working really hard to make sure that beneficial uses are heightened and supported, and that destructive uses are discouraged through communications. We are also, just like the question from the other Larry, this is a really wide-ranging, we have a lot of wide-ranging answers. This project is not actually providing any more access. It's a communications tool. The challenge that we have from the county perspective across the world is that public access to navigable rivers is guaranteed by federal law. And so a lot of communities have said, can we stop people when we reach a certain point? We can't actually legally stop people from using public roads and going into a river. At the same time, we're doing a lot of things to try to discourage things. So when we're putting up electronic signs on the freeway so that as beaches fill up, we say, go somewhere else. We have been putting in more public beaches that are actually monitored by rangers so that when they're full, we can close them. We have been working to provide tools that control parking. We've been working on this question from all the aspects that we can to try to control, and we have seen some good results, but it is a challenging topic. And again, we hope that by educating and inviting people to do the right thing, and to provide as much information, we can control it a bit. Oh, and one of the things that has worked really, really well is social media. Regional Parks has done a great job putting out social media, saying we're already full, it's 10 a.m. Don't, find somewhere else to go today. So, and they have actually found that to be pretty helpful. So it's a balancing act, and we want the right kind of people to come up and support our businesses and to help us, but we also want to keep the river healthy, and we're investigating this all the time.
And let me just add to that. I mean, one of the stakeholders, we said it just awesomely, people are loving the river to death.
Mm-hmm.
And another person I talked to, Kevin Jorgensen, world-renowned rock climber, we reached out to because he's very involved, not necessarily in river issues, but just in nature and conservation. And the way that they look at it is rock climbing is stressful on the areas that they go. They bring traffic to places that aren't designed for traffic. But the way that they look at it is every single person is an opportunity to be a steward of that. So with your audience, if you could change them behaviorally from sort of stressing out the river to doing something that contributes to the health of it, you can immediately turn things around potentially. So people aren't going to stop coming to the river. They've been coming to it in increasing numbers. We have to look at it as an opportunity where if their behavior is different or better and they can promote it and lead to a more healthy ecosystem and all that good stuff, then it's a potential way to improve the health of it. So just given time, there is a topic. Can you skip ahead, Brant?
Yep.
And this is great. This is a good one. Let's go to the next one. We want to hear about, there's been a lot of sort of campaign fatigue. We've heard that we've reached out to people. Some people are not open to the idea of this project. There have been campaigns in the past that are different, for sure, but the feedback we're getting is this is just another thing. And so we would love to hear from you folks. Why did past campaigns fail? What could have been done better? And then what have you done to support these and have sort of an open forum to opinions on this? Any perspective would be appreciated. And if there's none, that's fine too. But it's something we've heard about and we've read about, and it's we just have to be honest. It's hard for us to take a time machine back 10 years and know what it was like at the time, at the moment, to have hopes and goals for that campaign and be part of maybe the development of them, so on and so forth. So it'd be great to get some thoughts here.
I'm not seeing in front of this yet. Oh wait, there's a hand coming up. Amy, can you
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So hi, my name's Amy Windsor. I used to work for the county and now I'm the publisher of the Sonoma County Gazette. So awesome. I think that some of the past campaigns, like when the Confluence was established, it started out really strong. I know that Supervisor Gore and his team, they worked with the county agency, and it was this really great project where, they floated down the river and taught people and, invited journalists. This was back when I was a journalist and not working at the county, but they, invited journalists to come along, learn about the river. And I think that was really strong when it first kicked off. Then, of course, we got hit by floods and fires and fires and fires and fires. And so I think that it's probably a likelihood of the county just being in reactive mode, where it just, the Confluence and everything that it stood for just kind of got put on the back shelf. And, when I was there in 2019, there were some efforts to try to to get it again, or 2018, 2019, but it just struggled, and there was no good identity And so I think that, you know, what you guys are doing is, you know, trying to come back after 4 years, right? Um, of like nebulousness. And so the strength of it was when it was really hands-on. And since, I don't know, so since then it's been like, what is this, and how can we best be stewards of the Russian River? I hope that provides some kind of insight. Yeah, that's just been my insight anyway over the last like 5 years.
Yeah, thanks for that.
We got a message from Larry Boger saying he's lived here for 43 years and there has been no consistent campaign. So I think we're hearing from a couple of people that consistency and follow through seem to be lacking. Nick, is that a new hand or an old hand?
New hand.
Okay.
No, I was here. I was a member of the chamber when we had the last marketing campaign, and it's everybody got really involved, and we participated, and we spent $178,000 on a dubious, when it all said and done, balanced by nature was the marketing slogan we got, and a bunch of lackluster banners, and that's all that ever happened. So this is our experience with these sorts of things. This is what we expect from them, is just sort of someone to come in, spend a lot of money, and then leave us with something that, so this is what you're fighting against. So what sort of things have been achieved, like that have you achieved in the past that are similar? What can we, because the other marketing company showed us a whole bunch of marketing that they had done for Angels Camp and other places, and they talked a good game, but we really didn't see any results. And that's what I think the skepticism that I have and others have.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Marketing's it's a challenging thing. I mean, there's no doubt that you can't guarantee the success of anything, but it's something that companies, brands, organizations need to constantly do to be properly presenting themselves in a conversation. And a big part, it's reputation management. If you don't put good messaging out there on your behalf, then you're leaving yourself up to other people's imagination, right? So it's a way to sort of guide the perception of something. If it was just banners and so forth, how are those placed? What do they look like? What did locals do to help the campaign? And then what were the goals of the campaign? I think those are the things that we're not quite sure of. I think the awesome thing about this is the Confluence is doing a lot of great work. I mean, they just functionally need a visual identity partly to lean on to sort of help them sort of package up the presentation of that work and so on and so forth. And then I think the other thing we've noticed is there's a lot of organizations around the river, people doing a lot of good work, doing different work and communicating, and everybody cares. People are doing that. And there is potentially an opportunity for a platform for consistent messaging and a visual identity. And so I think a big part of this is to create a resource for other people's hopes and goals. That could be everything from merchandise in a store that you now have a brand that you can, potentially have like a souvenir or merchandise for a tourist, or something even locals want to have, a sense of pride, wear a shirt, wear a hat, go traveling, people could identify it. And then it just brings a sense of pride and hopefully progress to a location that does not have any sort of formal visual presentation.
Yeah, there's many different organizations, Nick, that we've observed throughout this process that all are doing, great, fantastic work, but it does seem to us that there is, a lack of a unifying identity that everybody can talk about when they talk about the river. And so, the Keep Tahoe Blue campaign was something that Elise had talked with us about, at the beginning of the project, and it's something that's kind of stuck in our craw, and that, you know, the Lake Tahoe is very similar in the fact that it is a natural resource that it provides quite a bit to that community. And I realize they're apples and oranges, so it's, you know, it's not exactly the same. But again, it comes back to when people hear about Lake Tahoe, there is one thing that comes to mind. It's keep Tahoe blue. And that, you know, it may be just a marketing slogan, albeit one that's 65 plus years old. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to do something similar here that can be a vessel for businesses, visitors, locals, tourists, you know, you name it, to all be able to put their certain sense of pride and their ambitions and their hopes all into this one unifying identity. And so I do think that is one of the things that we will hopefully make unique about this, and it will not hopefully you know, meet everyone's expectations of what has done in the past. So, but I appreciate your honesty, and I think it's a great thing to bring to the fore.
So we're getting to the end of our hour. We wanted to talk, just wrap up. I've got a couple more comments. Thank you so much. And just the general concept out of both of them is that the big platform is exciting. It's hard to wrap our heads around this level of scale, from, you know, Cloverdale to Jenner, having an identity that brings all those together, and at the same time have depth to the message. But I think what you just said about Keep Tahoe Blue is a good example. We also need to talk a little bit about some deliverables and what's going to be coming out next. So you guys want to wrap up with that, and then we'll let these good people go back to work.
Yeah, Elise, can you just quickly, we spoke about it earlier, you have a great sort of way to sort of frame this up, if you wouldn't mind sort of rehashing that.
We talked about so many things. Which one? What, you know, one of the key parts of this is that that businesses are a great way to communicate with people. And so by giving tools to businesses, whether it's a merchandise piece to wear proudly, or an educational piece that's available somewhere in the shop that is tied to the point of sale merchandise, is a great way not only to help spread the word for stewardship of the river, but it's also a good way for us to provide some value to businesses in terms of being able to sell some of these things. So is that what we were talking about, Ryan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we all know, you know, a lot of you guys, you know, a lot of businesses have merchandise, souvenirs, things that are picked up, apparel, you know, of course, this brand, there's a deeper root to it, which is all the good conservation work that's hopefully happening, but also the surface level, you know, what are some physical items that you think would be effective in promoting this?
Yeah. And as business owners, I mean, through that lens, I mean, if you guys, you know, just wouldn't mind, what are some things that you all think that can be effective, that could be at point of sale and, you know, in your businesses, or things that you've observed that, hey, I always wish we had one of these, or one of those kind of things?
And if you come up with some great light bulbs afterwards, don't worry, we're still in communication. One of our plans after this is to be sending out surveys. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? How about this? So we will keep businesses engaged and keep asking questions. And we hope that when you see our emails, you'll open them and respond. What is the email coming from? Is it Russian Revitalization at, or, you know, what would they see in their inboxes?
RussianRiverRevitalization.org.
Yeah. So we hope to keep getting your input, and also we plan to have some things available by Christmas, for your Christmas sales time, your holiday sales time, right, guys? Is there anything else in terms of next steps that we want to share?
real fast here. It looks like Larry is saying bumper stickers, best ad. Let's see here. Best ad tool from Keep Tahoe Blue, window stickers. And Larry also said we would put up signage at our business, sell merch, and provide brochures.
That's so great.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Larry. Thank you.
Yeah, so next steps, we're gonna hold a similar meeting that's completely open to the community. You know, this one is focused on businesses. We wanted to keep it business minded and driven, but I think we'll have another one that is an open opportunity to share with a complete public the progress, and then it's for us to get creating and you know, take it to the next phase.
Thank you all so very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing the information. And thanks, Larry, for that comment. Larry's been an outfitter on the river based in Healdsburg for 21 years. Larry, I'm going to come up and go out with you.
All right, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you
much.
everybody for everybody's time. Thank you so much.